And we're live.
Welcome everyone to the June 25th, 2015 XMod Pro user group. I'm Melinda Ford with DNNDev, and today we're having our user group meeting with two speakers. And I'd just like to remind you, if you would like to participate in the presentation, I provided a link that is showing up, should show up on the Google Hangouts page for this presentation. And when you're watching the presentation, if you have any questions, we encourage you to post your question in the Q&A, and I will be keeping an eye on that and trying to notify people so they can help answer your questions during the different talks. Also, there's a chat window. We don't tend to use that very much, but the Q&A is great because people can put their question in, and that question will also get marked when the person is answering that question. So today, like I mentioned, we have two speakers. We're going to have Stephen Lauer today talking about part 2 of his presentation from last week, so a continuation. And we also have Patrick Ryan doing his completion of part 3 of his past presentations. But first, I would like to introduce Kelly Ford of DNNDev, and he's going to get you started with our meeting. Welcome, everyone. Kelly?
Thanks, Melinda, and welcome to the June user group meeting for XMod Pro. There are a lot of things happening in the background that we've been spending a lot of time on lately, and I wanted to just start off the meeting today with a couple of announcements. The first one is near and dear to a lot of our hearts, people who have been around the XMod Pro community for a long time. Back in the XMod Classic days, which seems like an eternity ago. I don't know exactly how you measure an eternity, but it's a long time ago. Back when it was just XMod and just a few other modules in the snow-covered store, we had an exchange, the XMod Exchange, where XModders could post their own templates and forms and everything else to help out other XModders, and I heard back from a lot of people that it was really helpful for them. They would study the templates, study the code, and really learn how to make things work within XMod. We haven't had that for XMod Pro, and mainly because it just takes a lot of time to put something like that together. But we have been working on it in the background, and I am really, really happy to announce that as of today, we are going live with the XMod Pro Exchange, and that is live on the site right now. The easy way to get there is to go to DNNDev.com /XMPC. X is in XMod, M is in Mother, P is in Papa, and C as in caramel. How's that? Yeah. Probably not the official names for those letters, but go to XMPC. I'll go ahead and I want to give you a little brief rundown of the exchange. So if you give me a second here, I will share my screen and we'll show you all about it. Okay, so can you see that okay? People in the room? Is it big enough?
Can you enlarge it a little bit?
Enlarge it a little bit. How's that?
Yeah, that's a little bit.
Okay. So as you can see up in the top, it's XMPC on the DNNDev.com domain. And this is brand new. You can get to it through the community drop-down. You can see it has a nice little new badge to it. So the exchange. And what it is a collection of, actually it's much better than the XMod exchange. What we've done is instead of just having sample files or templates and forms that you could have, we have actually allowed people to put together packages. And packages can contain one or more forms and templates and JavaScript files and CSS files and even SQL scripts. So it is possible for people who are contributing to give you an entire solution that you could just simply copy and paste and get started with whatever it is. Or it doesn't have to be that elaborate. It can be something very simple. Like you can see here at, if I scroll down a little bit, this pre-selecting a drop-down list in a form. This is one that I created because we often get a lot of questions about, well, yeah, I have a drop-down list. It's fed from the database, but how can I pre-select it when you're just adding something? I want to have kind of a default selected item in the drop-down list. So I put that in there. It's very simple. It just shows you a couple of ways to pre-select. So let's go ahead and show you that. We can just click here, and that'll take you to the detail page, and it'll have a lot of information about who wrote it, the version number, when it was added, and when it was last updated, and then descriptions, requirements, if any, will be here, and then installation instructions. These are very simple. So, but any installation instructions will be here, and then any files that they've added will be in this little accordion here. First one is, obviously you can see it's very simple. It just shows you how to use the selected attribute in the list item to pre-select it, and the other one is pre-selecting it from a query. So we have this, and we are hooking it up to the data field right here. I'm not going to go into the details about how this works. That's not the point, but you can click the back button and go back to the home page, and as you can see, we have a lot of stuff here already, thanks to a couple of people here, that 3 people here that you know, 4 actually. Ryan Moore, Stephen Lauer, who will be presenting today, also Patrick Ryan, who is also presenting today, and Melinda and myself, we've also contributed some things here, and we really want to encourage you to go ahead and contribute to the Exchange. It's very simple. All you have to do is click the green, you have to be logged in order to do this, but then click the contribute button, and that will take you to the page. Just give your package a name, give it a version number. We want to encourage you to use the standard DNN versioning system, which is just 2 digits, dot 2 digits, dot 2 digits. And so everybody's going to start out with version 1, and that will help people kind of track what you're doing. So if you want to make some updates later on, people will say, okay, well, I have version 1. He came out with a version 1.1, so let's go ahead and see what changes were there. And you can see just add a description, your installation instructions, and requirements. And you click over to the Files page, and you can add a form, a template, a feed, SQL script, JavaScript, or CSS. And then, of course, you can manage these files. Let me show you the other part. We'll show you one that's actually been populated. So this is my contributions page. This will show you yours once you started to contribute. It will list all the packages that you added, their respective version numbers, and whether or not it's been published, and various creation and modified date. So if we look at, this looks pretty good. Let's look at the approval record with Ajax. You can see I filled this out, and we have some a bit of formatting we can use when we're filling out the description and installation instructions. Especially with installation, I would encourage you to use the ordered lists there, and then the requirements that are necessary for this particular solution for this package. Click over to the Files tab. You'll see that we have, much like in XMod Pro, we have colored syntax highlighting. This is for SQL specifically. This is a SQL script that we have that you'll need to install if you want to try this. And then the approve item, which is an actual feed. This is a JSON feed. The book listing here is a template, and you can see all of that here. And then, of course, we've got, this is something that I've added that other people can add as well. If you want to allow people to get up and running very quickly, then you can give them a script to actually insert some data. So that's what this is. This is just the kind of sample data that you can use when working through it. And if I wanted to delete one, I just make sure it's highlighted, click the delete button. Or if I wanted to add some more, I could do that right here. And if you want to change the name for your files, just click the little pencil here, change the name, and click Save. Then, once you're done with that, you'll want to save your changes, and then come back, and this button will say Publish, publish your package. Click that, and it'll publish it. It won't be visible initially. It will be published. That'll make it available for us, because one of the other benefits we're going to give you is we're going to be moderating what comes in. Now, we're not going to say this is horrible stuff, or this, we don't really like the way this looks, that kind of thing. But we are going to make sure, as best that we can, that there isn't anything here that's going to harm your system. And also, we want to kind of edit things for readability and make sure that it's hopefully a valuable contribution to the exchange. We won't be incredibly strict. We want to encourage as many people to contribute as possible, but just be aware that once you publish it, if it doesn't show up, that's just because it needs to go through our moderation step, and we will be getting to it, because as soon as you publish, we'll be notified that it's been published, and we'll get right on it and get it approved for you. So that is the XMod Pro Exchange. I hope you like it, and I hope you contribute. There's a lot of good stuff in here already, and hope to have more. And we have plans for a lot of other stuff. I was talking to Stephen about some of those additions earlier on, and he's had some good ideas for that as well. So we're gonna be adding more things to the exchange as time goes by, some fairly quickly actually. So please contribute, and please take advantage of it and learn from other people in the XMod Pro community. That is the XMod Pro Exchange. It's at DNNDev.com/XMPC. Okay, cool. Now, because we're really excited about that, I wanted you to be the first to know that we're kind of celebrating the addition of the XMod Pro Exchange, or the return of the exchange, and for that we're going to have one of our very, very rare sales on XMod Pro. And that means that you are going to be able to pick up XMod Pro for just $99 per license. This is for single license only, and only for people who have heard about it here or through the emails that we'll be sending out later today. But you've heard it here first. Hopefully you're watching live. This is a flash sale, which means it's not going to stay around for long. So it's time that you, even if you don't have an immediate need, you'll want to go ahead and grab one for a future client. Because, as you know, if you've been around this community very long, this sale just doesn't happen very often. I think this is only the second sale we've ever had on XMod Pro. So please enjoy the exchange, enjoy the incredible savings on XMod Pro, and more importantly, I want you to enjoy the sessions that we've got today. Stephen Lauer will be up first, and again, just a huge round of applause for him, because he's up at like 4 in the morning to do this for you. So, Stephen, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Thanks a lot for that, Kelly. And yeah, again, as I indicated last month, it's great to be able to add to and provide some support to a community that I've actually got some got some value out of listening to the videos. A couple of times I've been sitting there with the laptop and scrolling through the backwards and forwards on the YouTube video just to grab particular segments and try and read the stuff on the screen. That's why I was excited to see the exchange pop up on the website, to be able to help to provide some information, again, feeding back into the community that I've actually been able to receive something from. So what I'm going to go through today is continue on with a little bit of the next step, basically, from the form that I started last week, which was initially a contact form, but basically preparing a transaction ready to go out to an external payment gateway. The main reason I wanted to go through this particular one is that there's actually a whole pile of functionality that's available within XMod Pro to be able to use tokens and information from other sources. One of the sources that I talk about initially is the ability to use the I can't think of the right term now, in the settings area, or when you configure your module, the custom settings component within that, so where you set up your set up your module, and you can add custom settings there which pass into the form. So one of the exchange items that I've just put up there talks specifically to that, where you can just have a generic form, and within that form dynamically change it depending on which place you're looking at that from within your website. So what that can do is that I use the same form at many places throughout my website, where I'm grabbing things like contact details, validating email addresses, and the like, identifying whether they're a member so they get preferential pricing or not, all that sort of thing I've designed within the one form. So as soon as I make changes to that infrastructure, it's immediately available to all my other pages. So what I'll do is I'll just now go in and share my remote desktop connection. Just hopefully that's of a reasonable size that people can see successfully. So within that, this is the form that I did last time. So in there, I'm just typing in my testing item. So in there, I've gone in there and using jQuery. So again, that's probably one of the other snippets we'll put up there on the Exchange. where I've actually got the one form and I've just got components hidden and making them exposed subject to elements that you've filled in. So this particular form is designed in such a way that I want to be able to pay some money, because ultimately what we're doing in this particular form is punching out to a payment gateway. So in there I'm just saying I'm going to pay $13.50 is what I wish to contribute. And now what I've done there is open up the submit details. So what's actually happening in the back of this particular form is that once I've updated my donation amount, I'm using a feed and calling it from within my particular form to go and create a payment record within my database. So just going to SQL, executing the row 1, because I've got it in the right sort, is I've created my $13.50 transaction. The current status, I've set it as in progress. Because within my form I've identified that I'm set up with it as a contact within my database, so I'm not actually validating as a DNN user. In this case, this one I have validated as a DNN user, and then just a user ID reference so I can pick it up later. And through within that I've set up a callback page, and also if I do need to capture additional product information, I've actually got a field in there set up on that table. So that's all set up as part on the back of an XMod feed that I'm calling to actually insert records into this particular database. One of the things I've also identified within this, which will become important later, is who's being paid for it. So these particular accounts are my production accounts, but obviously because I'm dealing with a testing account, I've actually got this set up as the testing payee, and that will become more apparent in a few moments. So once I've actually set up my payment record within my database, I then go submit details, and what that's actually doing is calling my website with the payment preparation, punching out to the Secure Pay website, and I've actually passed through as a URL parameter the payment ID of 366, because that's the record that I've created in the background, hence why I'm using a feed. Is everyone seeing that, hopefully? So as a result of that, it's now come back and said, because I've already identified who I am, and I've actually got a transaction there that is to set out my Secure Pay data. The way that, so once I then do is click the big icon or the big image to then go and process that on my external website. So just briefly to look at that, when I go and edit this particular module and look at the components within it, in reality, what I'm doing is my select command is quite simple, is that I'm actually executing a stored procedure, and that's just a function of the way this particular payment gateway works. And from that, I'm actually picking up from within the select command, picking up my passed in parameter. Sorry, that's the wrong one, that's the post mode. This is the get mode, or as part of the URL, is picking up the payment ID, and fortunately this one's case insensitive, for want of better words, is that I've identified in the URL, pick up the payment ID, produce it as passed payment ID, and then pass that into my query that I'm running. What I've done within my stored procedure is, and this is a function of the way this particular payment gateway works, is that within this, I can pass, so I pass in my payment ID, set up a whole series of bits and pieces, but this particular payment ID, this particular payment gateway requires a hash of information. So set up a payload and then actually convert it to a fingerprint by turning it into a SHA-1 hash. This particular payment gateway allows that. Some of the other payment gateways that I have dealt with requires a punch-out return to grab a token from the payment gateway server, but this particular one is a simple one that allows you as a website essentially to produce your own fingerprint. So I found this one was quite a simple one to actually use. So what I've done is I've got a query where I've actually gone through and actually picked up my payment ID. So I picked up my payment detail from my record, as well as looking at my module information to pick up certain information, as well as I've got a table there called, originally I set this up as PayPal, so I've set my table up as PayPal account. And within my PayPal table, obviously I've dropped my production account, but in there I've actually got what account name I've called it, my account address of what it calls it out as, the URL that's required for it to punch out to, as well as my password, which I'm storing in the database. The cute thing about all of this is because all of this is happening on the server, it's not something that I need to expose to my end users, so when they go and inspect element, none of this stuff shows up within their HTML code. This is all done transparently in the background on the server. Obviously, for privacy purposes, I've hidden my production account, but I'm sure you can all understand where that's coming from. So as a result of that, I developed my fingerprint and returned that back as one of my criteria, as well as other bits and pieces that are required, like, for example, the timestamp, because that's one of the encryption methods that's in my timestamp and is required as part of my punch out. So all these values, as well as obviously identifying the username and first name and last name. I don't know why have I done that twice, but it's cute. So the first name and last name that is returned back into my form. So I may put something up like this, but I'm not sure how that's going to work, because each different payment provider is going to have different requirements for how they generate their payload, how they generate their hash, and even potentially in some payment gateways require that you punch out and then come back with a payment gateway generated token to use. So that's something that can be potentially discussed at another time. So within my form, I've actually got there an introductory information where I'm bringing back the first name, last name, as well as the item description of what they're paying for, as well as their amount or a display amount. I've got a section of hidden details. And one of the things I've found, particularly when I'm using post or redirects, is that if you're referencing a token within the punch out or within the post parameters, is that it needs to be a value on your form that it can actually pass through. So what I've done there is I've actually got a section within my form which is actually just display style of none, although I think I can go visible equals false is another option I could do on an individual item by item basis. But basically I've been able to pass in those details so that I can dynamically generate what I punch out to, including in this particular example, the URL that I'm punching out to is actually a token within my data, because I've got there's a production website you can go to versus a testing website. Hence why I've abstracted that out to a different layer. So if that makes sense for everyone. So from there, I'm now going to use, in this particular instance, this uses a post method of sending information out. So by clicking on my icon, it's punched me out to an externally hosted payment gateway website. This particular one allows you to pass in parameters to pass in some customization, like your logo, for example. In this one, just type in my testing card details, quite a simple one. As you can see, this is a test payment page. Choose any old expiry date, as long as it's in the future, some sort of random CCV, continue. It's simulating the payment processing of that particular element. And what that's doing in the background is now notionally approving that credit card payment. Oh, had this before. And what it does actually in the background, this is, that's right, because I've used 50 cents. This particular gateway has particular triggers to simulate failed transactions. So in this particular example, because I used a 50-cent transaction, it has actually passed back a failure message. So within my XMod Pro template, when I go and edit this page and look at my callback information, some of the parameters that I've passed in, you'll notice now, are form type values that I'm passing in. So these are values that have been defined by the payment gateway, as this is the information, because it's outside of the control of my website, they're providing, these are the values that I'm providing to populate those fields. So in there it's got the post success reference, which is the success, failure or declined, or user cancel, I think are the three options this particular one provides. When I did my punch out, I've included a payment reference ID, which is my payment ID that I'm using within my database, as well as they're providing back a message of why did it either approve or cancel or not decline that particular transaction. So they're values that I need to have within my database, to within my query, to be able to intelligently deal with the response. So what I've also done in the background is I've got a multiple of SQL statements in there separated by a semicolon. So that's within my select command on my form. to say that in the event that the payment reference number is 1, meaning an approved, that I can actually update my payment detail to say completed. If in the event that it returns with a payment success reference of 4, meaning that I've actually cancelled my somewhere in the process saying that transaction has been abandoned, I'm actually updating my payment record to say that it's been abandoned. Or in this example, saying it was declined, whether insufficient funds or whatever it may be. So I've gone through and actually updated my payment record so I can keep things relatively clean in the database, as well as obviously bring some stuff back onto the screen that I use for future requirements. So in there, I've got a series of hidden buttons, hidden icons, should I say, hidden detail to return some of that information, as well as having various components. So I've got a welcome message, add user button, and then I've also got a section for declined payments. So that's what's actually, and then I've got jQuery, based on the fact of what the success code is, that if the success code is 1, show the payment has succeeded, or if the payment has actually been declined, if it's anything other than 1, hide the welcome message, hide the ability to add the user, and then show the declined payment section within the screen. So it is a relatively simple form in some respect, is that it's basically saying, here it is, here's the response I've received, and here's the next action that can be performed by the customer. What I've also done is in the background, I've also set up within all of my forms, just so I can keep an eye on whether people have abandoned transactions through the process, is each of my forms do actually have an email node, so it actually tells me as the administrator that something has happened, and if in the event in this particular instance that it has actually been completed, it also sends an email out to my payments team just so that they know it has actually been completed. In this case, I've also got a send if the success code is 1. So we'll only communicate out if the payment has actually been successful to the broader audience. So again, I may put some of these elements up on the Exchange. I only saw it by chance last night, so I haven't done that as yet, but I'll certainly be adding components of this up onto the community. So hopefully people can get some value out of that. I appreciate that I have gone through that again relatively quickly, but hopefully just by explaining some of the components that I've got there can show you some of the ways that you can actually use both URL post as well as URL get types of moving information between forms, as well as receiving information from both internal sources, so moving from form to form, to external sources through being able to use posting. So thanks a lot for your time, and I'll hand back to Kelly to move on forward.
All right, thanks, Stephen. That was excellent. Now, so you've done some PayPal integration with this system?
Yes, I do have another page that does use PayPal pretty simply, although my customer base did find that because PayPal, unless you go through a whole series of hoops, does require every time that someone purchases from your site to actually create an account. We actually used this in a expo or fair, and they found that when they were standing there with iPads doing registrations, the whole idea of I've already identified myself in already identified myself in my website, to be able to pass that information across. Yes, there are additional parameters you can use, but it just gets a lot untidier from like if you've got standing there with 15 people in a line, you're working with an iPad trying to register them and get their payment details and take payment for them. I needed something that was actually simple, easy to use. Mm-hmm. In my 9-to-5 role as an implementation consultant, we had actually done works with different payment gateways, so I was able to leverage some of my learnings from my outside world to leverage this on what I was able to do with XMod Pro.
Okay, Ryan, go ahead and ask your question. You need to unmute.
Okay. What I was going to say, Stephen, was how about a PayPal IPN? Have you put together something that's dynamic like this that can handle the receiving end? We've put one together, but it's very hard-coded. It has to be set up manually for each portal or each instance. I haven't thought about doing some of what you're showing here.
I did look at it briefly, but I haven't really delved into it too much, really, because where I was running into trouble was at the front end of the process of actually what the user was experiencing when they were trying to go through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly, again, because I'm doing this part-time, not as part of my 9 to 5, just the ability to invest time in going down that path. But certainly, it is something I did briefly look at, which is not that dissimilar to what I've done in this particular example, is just receiving a post back from the from PayPal in this example. But certainly, it could be an option. I just haven't gone through down that path of investigating it.
Yeah. When we've done it, it's always been individual IPN handlers for every client or every instance, and very separated, very separate from each other. So I like your idea of how you're blending things together, but still in the back end, keeping them separate accounts and separate IDs.
Yeah, no, just again, always trying to find an interesting way of trying to achieve things using the tools I've got available. So it's probable that I've picked up bits of that from either elements on the DNNDev.com website, or through stuff that I've learned through user groups, or through stuff that's happening through Discover XMod Pro. So yeah, certainly very appreciative of the community. Hence, back to my original statement, love to be able to contribute back to somewhere that I've got information from.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Stephen. And thanks again for being up so early in the morning.
My pleasure.
Okay, now up next is the long-awaited, much postponed third part of Patrick Ryan's series that everybody's been waiting with bated breath for. They weren't able to see it last month, so this month we're going to finish up the series. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Kelly. Patrick here, Reflect Media Group, Discover XMod Pro, and quite frankly, I don't know how I can follow a presentation like this after Stephen. His accent is just so cool, and I'm so lame in Kentucky. So I have to admit that. Kudos to you, Stephen, and very, very cool demonstration. And Kelly, very awesome presentation on the XMod Pro Exchange. I really look forward to massive contributions and explosive community growth out of that. So anyway, I will begin with sharing my screen and attempt to live up to Stephen's expectations. So let's see here. Let me switch over. And here we are. If you guys can just give me a thumbs up when you can see that. Thumbs up. Okay, so what we've got here, and if you're really interested in this, I think I started this in March, and then the second one was in April, and with a very good excuse, thank you very much, Kelly, I was not able to be here last month, but this month I'll be doing part 3, and there'll probably be more parts to this. But just a quick recap. What we've got here is a solution to how can we organize parent categories and child categories respectively. So here is a template that lists parents, children, parent, child, and so on. And you can see that the hyphen designates a child category. That hyphen does not exist in the database. It just exists based on a condition if it is a child or not. And the goal out of all of this is incorporating this into a form so that we can take a standard multi-select list box and transform that into a checkbox tree. So let me just kind of jump back into the code briefly, just to kind of recap on this. So what I've got here is, in my form, I've got a controlled data source here where I am generating the categories for the list box. And you can see well, there's the hyphen right there, here's a hyphen right here, and you'll have to go back and watch the other videos for a deeper explanation of that. So I'm going to jump straight down here to the actual form. So here we've got a list box with an ID of categories, data field of categories. And down, and I'm actually going to have to change data type there. But anyway, so down here, what I've got beneath the list box is an unordered list with an ID of categories container. And the goal of that was to take all of the values from the list box and generate them dynamically with JavaScript or jQuery, same thing. Anyway, to build that directly beneath the list box. So it starts out with creating a variable called select, and I'm identifying my actual list box using client name in the form that was explained in the last session. And then I am capturing the actual unordered list in a container here, and I'm just giving an empty string for the checkboxes. Then what I'm doing is I'm actually dynamically building for each item basically found in that list box, for each option, because on the client side they're literally called options, and I'm saying option is this, the value is the option value, the text I'm trimming it, I explained that in the last video, and then I'm identifying basically, hey, is this a parent or is this a child based on the existence of that hyphen. Then you can see here I'm actually building the entire LI element with an input type checkbox, the value. I'm using ternary operators to determine whether that's selected or checked and so on. And then after that, after they're all built, after it loops through each one, I'm then appending that to the container. And again, the container is this container right here. And then something that was pretty cool, and that is actually grouping these properly. I'm saying, container, I want you to find all of your children, all of your items, and basically if it's a child, I'm going to take that child and any other child that's beneath that parent and wrap that in a nested unordered list in an LI within that unordered list with the class of children. So, looking at that again, we've basically got a replication of the list box up here turned into a category tree down here, which isn't totally functional yet, but we're about to take care of that. Let me grab a code snippet, and I'm going to just copy and paste some CSS here. So give me just 1 second. Now, because I'm basically generating class names, whether it's a parent or child and so on, we don't want the children to show up unless a parent is clicked on. And in the same right, we want the children to show up if this is like an edit form and a parent has been selected. So I'm just adding some classes here. This is pretty much has nothing to do with the demonstration. It's just a styling issue. That's hiding the little bullets. And same thing here. So here I've got LI children, display none. And then I've got another rule that says if it has the class children and if it has the class show, display block. So I'm going to go ahead and save and reload that. Okay, so that's what we want to see. So now we can just see the parents, but the goal is when we click on parent A, well, it needs to show us child A2, and apparently test there. So give me 1 second. All right. Let's go back into the code. I'm going to scroll down here to my JavaScript. So after I've wrapped all these elements up, what I want to do, and remember, if an option is selected, it's going to show the checkbox is checked. So what I want to actually do now is within my container, I want to find any LI element with the class of parent true, input checked, its parent, LI, next, LI children, add class, show. Double checking that syntax. Okay, now this actually won't do anything yet. This is based on the existence of a pre-selected item, which I don't have any. Now the cool thing is we can actually, and we will in a minute, use the select command to show how this actually works. Now what I want to do here is I want to handle the capturing of clicks. So when I start I'll just make a little note. I'm going to capture clicks here. So when I start clicking on checkboxes, we need to be able to deal with that. So now I can type container find input click function. So basically that is listening for any kind of click event on the inputs, on the checkboxes. Now I can say var checkbox. I'm going to just go ahead and create some variables here. Val and checked. Now I can say, like we did in the last session, checkbox equals this. So I'm caching this. And then the value is going to be the checkbox value. And now I need to determine whether this is checked or not. So I can say checked is equal to checkbox is checked. Now what we need to do is we need to be able to sync this activity to our actual list box. So if we click on one of these categories within the checkbox list, we need to make it automatically select the item in the list box as well. So, let's see. All right, so we've captured the click, and now I'm going to say sync with listbox. So I've already captured my listbox in the select variable. So I'm going to say select find option, and the value of that option, I'm going to pass in the value, doing some concatenation. Property selected checked. And now we have to deal with any child elements. So if you select a parent, you're going to have to show the children. Make sure I didn't mess that up. I think that's right. Yeah. So I'll just call this deal with the kids. Deal with the kids. All right, so now I can say if the checkbox is parent, has class, parent true, then we can say checkbox parent next li children toggle class show. Now, if you remember, when I added that CSS in there, that basically said if it has the class children and if it has the class show, it's going to display that item. Next, if checked is equal to false, we can say checkbox parent next li children find input each function. That's fun. Say var child and child value. So the child is equal to this. The child value is equal to child.val. Hopefully you can see me repeating this logic for the parent and the children. The child property checked is false. And now we need to find this item in our select, our list box. So we can say select, find, the option with the value of the child value, because that's an incrementing value. That is the, nothing's going to be the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So let's see, say property selected is false as well. Now, make sure I don't have any JavaScript issues. Okay, you see a couple things happening here, and this is really neat. So if I select the parent, parent A, you can see that parent A is selected in the list box. If I select child A, you can see child A is selected in the list box. If I deselect parent A, both are removed. And that's a natural order. If I'm deselecting a parent, the children need to be removed as well. And then we've got parent B, test B, parent A, child A2. Now, one of the really cool things about this is when I started out, I had a lot of difficulty in the edit form because it's easy to kind of build it. Well, I don't want to say easy, but once you figure it out, it's fairly easy to understand and build this for an add form because you don't have to worry about anything. But the question comes in, well, what if you're loading this into an edit form and stuff is pre-selected? In the actual JavaScript that I put together, if you recall, it handles that because it is building the checkbox list based on what already exists here. Whether it's selected or not is determining whether a checkbox is pre-checked or not. And the really cool way that you can test this, and I can kind of prove it to you, is you can just throw in a select command, and this will show you how it will work within an edit form as well. So I can say select command, command text equals select. Now keep in mind when this actually goes to SQL Server, when you're storing this in the database, it's storing it as a pipe delimited string. And that's why I need to change my data type too, by the way. But so I know I have a category with the ID of 1, and I know I have a category with the ID of 2, and I'm just going to say as categories. So now if I did that right, reload this page, you can see that it pre-selects them based on that. So this is expanded, and this is selected, and again, this should work flawlessly. Next question you might have is, well, how do we get rid of this list box? And that's probably the easiest thing out of all of this. We can do it one of two ways. We can just hide it with CSS, or we can go in here and do something that just feels good to do it because it makes you feel fancy, and just add a .hide on the end of there. There you go. So now we've got our Databound Listbox synced with our parent-child checkbox list. And what I'm going to be showing you at some other point is how we take that delimited string, we send that to the database, and there is something called database normalization. Big fan of it. If you don't do it, you should. And basically that means if in this particular instance we do not want to store a pipe delimited string in a field. That's a big no-no. If you're getting away with that for a simple project, maybe so, but not a good idea. What you need is a junction table. You need a relationship table set up to where you can show all the categories that have been selected in their own separate record. And the other side of that token is how do we deconstruct, denormalize that data. We can do that with a SQL function and turn it back into a pipe delimited string to send it to the form. Yes, I do, Ryan Moore. Thank you. But this is really cool, and actually one thing that I'm working on, and I've done it for a client, and it's really neat, and I'll probably roll this out in the future, is I've got a category solution that's unlimited depth. So I've literally created a file management solution for XMod Pro to where you can create category nests, no different than your computer, creating multiple nested child folders, uploading files to those folders, and organizing them in that manner. It's kind of like you're navigating on your computer, so that's really, really cool. But it's not done yet, so you'll have to wait for that. Well, that's it for my presentation for this time. I know it's a lot of JavaScript to look through, and it's hard to kind of break it down piece by piece in a nominal amount of time, so watch the video over and over, and this will also be on the XMod Pro Exchange, so no worries on that. Thank you much.
Thanks, Patrick. Question for you: could you go through a little bit more detail on some of the jQuery stuff? People who are familiar with jQuery may not be familiar with some of the items that you used, like the next until or actually even just the word ternary operator. If you can go through those sections in your template and explain them a little bit more, like how a ternary operator works and how it's functioning in your code, as well as what the next until does.
Sure. Well, yeah, one thing that most people, when you start getting into JavaScript, you learn conditions, and typically that is if something, then do something, else do something else. A ternary operator is a nice, handy shorthand way of doing that all on one line. So here's a couple right here. So for example, this is a ternary operator, and it's based on a condition. The condition is first. So that's a condition that is either going to return true or false. It's just a condition. But in the question mark signifies, well, if this condition is true, it's like asking a question. Kind of look at this backwards. Is this true? Is this what's happening here? Basically, does this text trim, does it have an index that does not equal 0? An index of is the actual placement of a character within a string. So if you've got, like, here's a word text here, well, the index of t exists on 0 and 1, 2, 3. So if that condition is true, then this is what you do. This is the result. So this is a little tricky to explain. Text trim is equal to, if this condition is true, it's just going to equal to text, which is just the trim text. If it's false, however, I need to do something else. In this case, I'm doing a substring of 1, and that's dealing with that hyphen. Here's another example down here when I'm building the checkbox. So I'm literally crafting a checkbox by building it as a string at first, and that's when you can see here I'm actually turning it into a jQuery object to where it'll be recognized as HTML. So let's find it. Here's a ternary operator, and this is where it helps with the select command. So here's a condition. If the option is selected, is that true? Then I'm going to make the checkbox checked. If you look at this in the HTML and try to look past all of this code, you've just got an input type equals checkbox, value equals whatever the value is, and then after that, if the option is selected, if that is true, then all I'm doing is adding check to the checkbox. I know it's a little confusing. I hope that makes a little bit more sense. So that's a ternary operator. I could do this more longhand by doing if this, else that, but this makes it convenient when you're building a string on one line like this. Now, after I've appended the checkboxes to the container, this is a really cool one, and it's kind of mind-blowing. It's really confusing until you really wrap your head around it. So what we've got here is we're saying the container, I want you to look through the children of the container. Those are all the options. Those are all the actual checkboxes. And I want you to find the parent false, but there's a rule here. It can't be parent false plus parent false, meaning preceded by. So basically what this does is it finds the first child of each one. Let me just jump back here and I'll show you that again real quick. This will be a little bit harder to read. Okay, so look real close, smush your face up to the monitor and take a look at this. You can see we've got parent equals, or parent dash true, and then beneath that we've got parent false. It's not a parent. It's a child element. And it's already built this here. So what I actually have to do is kind of deconstruct it to show you how that worked. Let me go ahead and do that. That'll make more sense. I have to comment out some code because it's already done its thing here. Okay. And hang on. There we go. Oh, let me comment out some more. Hang on. Kelly's got me going backwards. Okay. All right, now we're talking. Okay, so what it's saying is I want you to find a parent false that's not preceded by another parent false. Well, this one's preceded by another parent false. This one's preceded by another parent false. This one's not. So it's basically saying I want you to find the first child. Find all of the first children. Well, here's one. Here's one. And here's one. And then what it does is it says, I want you to find all of my siblings that are parent false, including myself. So we'll take this as an example. So it's these three. 1, 2, 3. Let's jump back in. So container, children. The children are all those LI elements. Find the class parent false, but let's add a rule here. It can't be parent false plus parent false. For each of those, so in my case there was, what, 3 of them? I want you to take this and then find all that, go next until you run into a parent. We want to stop there. We don't want that. And then take myself as well for the ride and wrap us all in li class equals children, and strapping this ul on the end will wrap those children inside proper HTML syntax. So you've got li parent, and then li children, and then a ul, and then li's within that. And that's proper HTML structure. Confusing, I know. After searching and trying to figure out the most optimal way of doing this, you just have to stare at this and look at it over and over again until it clicks. And even when it clicks, it's still hard to explain. And these are just techniques. I could have done this many other ways, but this is the most efficient. So that's an explanation of your ternary operators, to have a little shorthand, quick way of doing one thing, else doing something else, and as well as wrapping all these up in a container.
It's really a testament to how powerful jQuery can be.
Yes, it is.
What
I love about this, what I love about development, and I like to encourage everyone else to do so. I'm the kind of person that once I build something, I'm excited that I built it, and then I look at it. I look at it a couple times, and I'm like, oh, it's horrible. It could be better. And then I'll spend days trying to figure out how can I make this better. And what I found is, if you know HTML, you know SQL, T-SQL, SQL Server, and JavaScript, XMod Pro is just really a mediator of all that kind of stuff that interacts with your data for you and silently teaches you how to program. Because once I got into actual programming server side, I mean, it's emulated all throughout XMod Pro, and it cut my learning curve down on that drastically. So taking XMod Pro, taking SQL Server, taking CSS, HTML, and then adding jQuery in the mix, learning Ajax, posting behind the scenes, you can do anything. And what you think you can't do, you'll learn how to do later once you learn how to extend XMod Pro with custom form actions, template tags, getting into even web API. I mean, just to encourage everyone, Kelly's seen a lot of this stuff, and he does it all the time, and we've stretched this stuff into building JSON on the server through SQL Server, using templating engines and JavaScript templating to build, nested and nested and nested stuff. There's a feature called XMod each that allows you to iterate over a simple delimited string. Well, once you learn how to do all these things, you'll look back and you'll go, I see where all this was coming from. Well, now I can create like a, well, I don't know. I'll go on a rant. Just just an encouragement. You can build anything.
Very well spoken. Of course, I appreciate those comments. Thanks again, Patrick. It sounds like you have built in session 4 for your series now.
Apparently, it's kind of happened that way.
I assume we'll see you next month then for that. Steve, I saw some really interesting things in your SQL code that people probably aren't too familiar with unless they do SQL all the time. I saw you were generating some hashes within SQL. That might be something to consider pulling out and making a session out of later. But I do know that next month we're going to have Ryan Moore. He's going to be continuing with his series on doing debugging. And do you want to give us a little preview, Ryan?
Would love to. I'll give a little bit of a soundbite about the things we're going to go through. If you were on last month's session, I did one using the presentation system called Prezi, so there's a little bit of visual flair to it, but I stepped through a laundry list of general error messages that you might run into or encounter when you're doing development in XMod Pro. And these aren't errors or bugs of XMod Pro, these are the things that you're going to run into on an ongoing common basis because of a typo or because of bad SQL that you wrote or any number of different things from a dough kind of no-brainer moment where you forgot to put a tag or you copied part of a form into a template or vice versa to some things that are really difficult to troubleshoot and find because they're a little bit vague about the messages they give. So with my crew and with all of our developers, I have them submitting to me each and every error that they ever get, and I've compiled a list that I feel is fairly exhaustive. I'll continue a little bit of that in the next session, but I'm also going to spend time doing what I call the ballistic method of troubleshooting. And that method is something that I teach all of my introductory developers when they get started, and it's a way to cut down the hunting and pecking and pulling your hair out time period. So that's what I'll do in the next session, and then after that we'll follow it up with a blog article and access to some of the resources, but should be able to finish up with some really good information in that second session.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. Looking forward to that. Chances are I've run into a few of those problems myself. Everybody does. So it's always good to have kind of a strategy to approach your debugging session. And you can do a lot with XMod Pro. You can do really simple stuff, or you can do very complicated stuff. It just, as with everything in programming, the more complicated you get, the more likely you are to run into some problems, and the faster you can track those down and solve them, the better off you're going to be, and the more hair you're going to have on your head at the end of the day. I do want to remind you that we have our sale where the emails are going to be going out after the session today, and it is one of those really rare sales, $99 for XMod Pro. It's $50 off, and again, this is the second time we've ever done it. It's a flash sale, and it's in celebration of the new feature we've added to XMod Pro, or to DNNDev.com, and that is the XMod Pro Exchange, which I talked about early on in the session. So I encourage you to go check it out, learn from what's there already, but even more importantly, contribute your own solutions and techniques and ideas on that. That is at DNNDev.com/XMPC. And you'll find the exchange there. Make sure you're logged in, and then you'll be able to contribute. I do want to remind you also that this is something we do every month. This is the XMod Pro user group, and we do it online because XMod Pro users are found around the globe, as Stephen is a very good example of, again, getting up at 4, probably 5 now in the morning, just to be with you and to share his knowledge with you. And we encourage you to learn from that, to engage in the community, help bolster the community, feedback into the system so that other people can learn from what you know. And if you would like to be like Steven and you'd like to be on an XMod Pro user group and do a presentation of either show off a site that you built that uses XMod Pro, or you have a technique or something you'd like to teach us all, we'd love to hear from you. Just send me an email, kford@DNNDev.com. You can also post on our Google Plus page, tell us, which is how Stephen got a hold of us, and tell us you want to present, and we'll start talking to you, and we'll get you set up for a user group. It'll be awesome. We'd love to have you. That's it. The user group is now, we happen every the fourth Thursday of every month. So the next user group meeting is going to be July 23rd. Same time, same back channel. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful time XModding and enjoy your summer. Stay cool. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys.